Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight on our live. Welcome back to Alleged Actually. Tonight is a very special episode because we are joined with two very special guest co-hosts. We have with us CW and Big Nige from Goatcast Podcast. Say hi, fellas.
What's going on, everyone?
What's up?
All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about the Brittney Griner interview with Robin Roberts. Then we're going to get into a discussion on the new era of the WNBA. Before we get into it, guys, I have a quick clip I want to share with you guys.
At the Moscow airport, this is Russian Customs Service footage of Brittney Griner putting her carry-on bags through the scanner, unaware that life as she knows it is about to end, as the agent tells her to search her backpack. So you reached down because you've been told to go through your bag,
Yep.
And you felt
the cartridge.
The agent stared as I slowly lifted out a cartridge with cannabis oil. In Arizona, cannabis is legal. In Russia, it's forbidden. I knew that, honest to God. I just totally forgot the pen was in my bag.
What were you thinking at that moment when you felt that and had to bring it out?
Like my whole heart just fell out of my body.
Wow. So, y'all, like I said, I wanted to talk about the Brittney Griner interview. That was just a little snippet of that interview with Robin Roberts. Before I get into it, guys, I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that Bria, who is my co-host, may be joining us later. She is not with us due to technical difficulties, so we may be bringing her in a little later. But back to Brittney. That clip just sets up, a lot of us already know what happened. Brittney, as she had done for 7 seasons, was getting ready to play for the Russia team. And as she was getting ready to get there and was at the airport, she was detained for having vape cartridges with the cannabis oil in it. This interview was actually so important because Brittney Griner, though she is a very important basketball player in the WNBA, very popular. She's 33 years old. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 9-time WNBA All-Star. She plays for the Phoenix Mercury. Just one of your more popular players. But she's also someone that's not always the one out doing a lot of talking. And as we know, she was detained back in February 17th of 2022. She was in the Russian prison for 10 months. And she has never spoken publicly about what happened to her while she was there until then. And that aired on Wednesday on ABC with Robin Roberts. So without going too much into detail, because we know what happened, that was pretty much stated in the clip. But I wanted to talk about, Brittney Griner, as she was detained. First thing that she did was try to contact her wife. And her wife then contacted her agent. Then when her agent had realized what had happened, initially she said, stay where you're at. This time she was still being detained in customs. I'm going to have an attorney sent to you. And that's exactly what had happened. So attorney was sent to her. I think at this point, even though Brittney knew she had messed up, I don't think anyone could have foreseen what she was going to be dealing with. Mm-hmm. So she was detained at a women's prison. The conditions that she lived in, you got to realize Brittney Griner is 6'9". That is bigger than most men. So for women being in a women's prison, she said, the single beds were tiny. Her body would just lay off of it. I mean, she's 2 times the length of a regular woman. The facility to use the toilet was a hole in the ground. The mattresses were stained with blood. There was, she said, a little thin blanket to, that wouldn't even cover her. The food, Her breakfast would consist of a porridge that was the consistency of like a cement almost. The things that they used for hygiene, toothpaste, was so outdated that they used it to put on the wall to kill the black mold. They would allow them outside time. And I don't know, many of you guys know, but Russia gets like below zero in temps. And they were supposed to be out for like an hour. They would leave them out for hours in freezing temps. She talked about very low points. She talked about even the thoughts of suicide, and really, despite all that she went through, what seemed to be the thing that when you would see the most emotion well up in Brittney was the fact that she felt like she let her family down. Mm-hmm. And what I found very interesting about the story was Brittney went to play for Russia. And like I said, she'd done so for 7 seasons because she wanted to make more money to take care of her family. In the States, she was making, at that time, she had this was 2022 when this happened. She was in the midst of a 3-year deal. The total amount of the deal was $644,544. But it's broken up. The first year you get an increment. The second you get a little more. And the third is when you get the most. And I'm sure that's because you're not going to get it up front in case you get injured or, you can't, whatever. Right. So she had got into the second increment, but then she would go over and play. So to give you some idea of what that is, the last increment of her contract, she did receive the WNBA did pay her, which I thought was great. It was $228,000. One season that she played in Russia, she would get $1 million. So, it's certainly understandable. And she's not by herself. Other WNBA play, and there are NBA players that play abroad as well for the additional money. But I particularly wanted to touch on that because a lot of attention has been on the fact for years about the pay disparity between NBA and the WNBA. Now, there's a lot of reasons behind that, and that's why I have my resident experts here with me from Goatcast Podcast. They do all things basketball, NBA, college, coaches, anything regarding basketball, they got it. So I wanted them here to talk to me a little bit about what their thoughts are about the WNBA. Brittney, thankfully, she did, the U.S. and Russia had get into negotiations. Russia used her really as a political tool. And it sparked a lot of outrage because, there were supposed to be 2 Americans released. Brittney had nothing at all to do with who was released. Even she uses her platform to try to advocate for any American that's over there unjustly. Particularly, it was Paul Whelan, Marine, that got detained there. And we're still, the United States is still working to get him back. But that was not in her hands. Her wife and her fans, the WNBA, the NBA stood together. And thankfully, she was brought home safe in December of 2022. She has been silent. You can tell that it's had a major effect on her. And the one thing that she wanted to do, of course, was get back to what she loved, which is basketball. And though she is not interested in going back to play for Russia or anybody, the one time she said that she will go abroad again to play will be when the Olympics happen. Like I told you, she's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. She wants to play for the country she loves, which I found to be, like I said, on brand with, the kind of athlete and the kind of player that she is. So, CW, I want to toss it over to you to get your thoughts. And, there's a new school coming in WNBA. And those players like Brittney and those before her, though notable and wonderful, we got some new school players coming along that's giving us some hope and some new buzz to the new life into the WNBA, if you will. What are your thoughts, CW?
Well, I'll start off with the pay disparity, which is unfortunate but what we have to remember is the WNBA in reality is only 28 years old. So it's hasn't been around. Even the NBA back, even before the merger with the ABA, even after, it struggled. It was barely televised. It would be on tape delay. They'd had to get a Magic and Bird, even though they had Dr. J, they had Wilt Chamberlain, they had Kareem before them. It took the efforts of a Magic Johnson and a Larry Bird to really lay that foundation. And then, of course, the greatest of all time came in soon after that, Michael Jordan, and took it global. So off those people's backs is when the NBA really, truly took off. So unfortunately, the WNBA is struggling in that department. I know people are like, well, why doesn't the NBA market them better? Why do they do these types of things? And yeah, they could, but you got to understand who watches most sports. Men. And the unfortunate thing is WNBA and women's basketball, period, gets the bad stigma. And you know where we live? We live in America, where certain people have different views.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they have a stereotype of, a lot of lesbians. So you lose some audience because of that. Mm-hmm. And they play more of a fundamental style of basketball. They don't play, even though I like it. I'm sure Big Nige likes it, but we're a small segment of who you need to market to. You got to get the casual fans in there, but you don't have the highlight packages that the NBA can put forth. Then you struggle, and then the personalities, all of that. But the pay is mostly because of their revenue. And if you look for, just for you to understand, the NBA brought in $10.58 billion last year. And their salary cap, and the WNBA structured the same way. They have a CBA, so they're structured the same way. Each team had $112 million salary cap. So that's how much they could divvy out to their players. Compare that to the WNBA, who actually had a great year last year. And I think that's off the back of women's college. It has brought some more eyes, but they made $200 million. And for that fact, for this year, their salary cap is $1,400,000.
Dang.
That's a huge difference. You have to divide that between 11 and 12 players.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference. So that's the unfortunate thing. And, I know there are people out there that are like, it's unfair that the men make this and the women make that. But here's my quick point I'm going to make. You can't advocate for something you don't support. So if you're going to sit there and say, why are they not getting that? But you can't name 5 WNBA teams or 5 WNBA players, then who's the issue? What's the issue? You can't say they need to be making this money. They need to be making LeBron money, and you can't name none of their players. You can't name 2 All-Stars. So you have to, you have to put that into perspective. So I think with the new era coming in, and I talked about this on one of our videos, Caitlin Clark, I'm not saying she's going to be, her game is like Michael Jordan, but I'm saying she might be the Michael Jordan for women's basketball because, as you see, she's bringing a bunch of eyes. She's one of the few women's players, NBA players, that had got a Nike shoe deal before she was even drafted. So that's huge. One of their best players, Aja Wilson, doesn't even have a shoe deal. So you see what she's doing for him, and you saw Ice Cube was putting up $5 million. So, WNBA seeing, and the NBA and all these other entities are seeing what their worth is becoming. So I think they're on the right track to get to that. They might not make NBA money in the next 10 years, but I think that day is coming because the sport is growing. Right. The fan base is growing. And so, so I think that this new group is similar. It feels like that Magic Bird, where, of course you have the white and black, But you have Angel Reese. You have, even though I think she's gonna have a tough time because the one thing people don't know is WNBA players, even lottery picks, don't always make the team.
Really?
So it's not guaranteed that they'll be on the team come regular season time. So it's not like the NBA where if you're top 10, whatever, you're pretty much guaranteed to be on that team. It's not like that for them. So she's got to make the team. So does her game translate? I think it does, but she's going to have a tough time because there's some other big girls, big women that can, push her around. So, but I think that the personalities, the fact that these NILs allow them to be marketed by other entities, State Farm with Caitlin Clark.
Mm-hmm.
So they're helping the WNBA without the NBA having to step in. And before I finish, and I'm gonna send it over to Big Nige, but people have been talking about the WNBA splitting from the NBA, which probably not wise right now, but because they have to follow the NBA's CBA stuff, if they did, then the sky's the limit for them. They can but you have to have backers and all that, but then they can make their own rules and say we can pay these players X amount of money. So that's what could happen in the future, but I think they're in a good place right now. I think they're on the rise. What you think, Big Nige?
Well, I'm glad we gotten that out there. Obviously, before I get into it, the whole MJ GOAT thing. Listen, right?
That's all you heard.
No. But if we're talking yes, the WNBA is in good hands. Mm-hmm. Caitlin Clark, when you're saying she could be MJ, I'm thinking more like LeBron. And just hear me out real quick, because her coming off of a historic NCAA run, becoming the all-time leading scorer, doing unprecedented things, right? So that calls for unprecedented changes coming into the WNBA. Obviously she's coming off of averaging, 32 points a game, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, shooting 46% from the field, and 38% from the 3-point line. Like, she can shoot that thing,
Ryan.
Like we're talking about. Oh God, I just saw MJ go.
Shout out Leslie Ryan.
Yeah, another conversation for another day. But when we're talking about Caitlin Clark, I just seeing how marketable she's been. And look, I was at Lowe's just not even like an hour or so ago getting stuff for my new apartment, right? I'm seeing a Caitlin Clark new magazine, right? I haven't seen a WN player in a magazine in a local store since I can ever remember, right?
Yeah,
that's a big deal, right? She's getting a lot of push, a lot of hype. Like CW brought up the shoe deal that she got before she even played a dribble of WNBA basketball. Unheard of, right? And now that you have all this buzz coming from her, just her alone, we're not touching other people just yet. You see just how much gravity this one player can hold. You see all the eyes coming from college to see her play, see her shoot that thing from the parking lot. Like everybody compares her to Steph Curry. Steph Curry is one of the biggest stars in basketball, one of the best players to ever touch the game. And they're comparing her because, obviously she's like 6 foot, like she's a tall, women's basketball player. So she's got more versatility to her game. She can go down there and rebound. She can pass. She's a great, phenomenal passer. On top of her shooting and shot creation ability, a lot of WNBA players haven't come straight from college with that kind of package that she has, right? So that leads to more people with the oohs and ahs of an Allah like a Steph Curry, but she's throwing passes like you would say a Magic or LeBron, Jason Kidd, and she can rebound. She can do everything. So when you're talking about a player who can do everything with the marketability, with the shoe deal coming in, I'm thinking of a guy like LeBron James, and everybody knows LeBron is all world, right? Not gonna get into all that, but then you have other people, right? You have Angel Reese, coming from LSU, who even Shaq on his podcast said she's the greatest LSU, athlete ever, right? And we all know how great Shaq is or was when he played, but she delivered a championship to LSU, beating all the things I just said about Caitlin Clark, beat her Iowa team in the championship game just last year. Right, so we got to give her flowers too, and she's a dog defensively. When you said her game could translate to the WNBA? Absolutely, right?
Mm-hmm.
She plays both sides of the ball, which you could say one thing that Caitlin Clark maybe doesn't do or doesn't show a concerted effort. Angel Reese will defend, right? And that's, you want to talk about the new age and how we had that segment on our show about where's defense in the NBA. Hey, WNBA players, they play some defense. These girls are physical, man. They were just watching these girls just batter and bash into each other. It be making my knees hurt. So you got girls like her going to the Chicago Sky. You got Camille Cardozo. She's a huge woman, saying like 6'7", 6'8", massive. And she's coming from that undefeated South Carolina team, who, again, we're talking about everybody being involved in storylines. Caitlin Clark had to go through that South Carolina team. Not this last NCAA tournament, the one before that. She got all her hype for beating Camille Cardozo's team, that South Carolina undefeated juggernaut, right? That's where she got her hype from, is beating that team with Cardozo, right? And then obviously we talk about the 18.9 million views, Iowa versus South Carolina. It's because of players like Caitlin Clark. It's because of Camille Cardozo and the plethora of other talented women on those teams going head to head, right? We got storylines, we got narratives, all the things that, build the fans, the engagement, the revenue. All these things go in hand to hand with one another. And so, I mean, like you said, the WNBA is in really good hands. And if we're going to talk about what the future could look like, we could look no further than just this past All-Star season. With the All-Star game and, Steph Curry going against, I believe it was Kelsey Plum in that three-point contest.
No, it was, I can never remember, I think her name, Stephanie Ionescu or something like that.
But they had like those two going at it in the three-point contest. We need to see more stuff like that, because let that girl beat Steph. Now more eyes are on her, not only her, but her team. Can she replicate beating a shooter who everybody believes could be the greatest shooter of all time? How does she translate that to her game, right? Can anybody else shoot the ball like her? Now we have more eyes and more engagement, because the All-Star, weekend is one of the most televised things outside of maybe the NBA playoffs. So we have all those things, and if we can continue to push the WNBA and bring a Caitlin Clark to the All-Star weekend, have her shoot it out with Steph Curry. Could you imagine the viewership?
Yeah,
the more revenue that could come from that. Maybe combine something where the WNBA players get to showcase their talents. Put them in the skills challenge, the three-point contest, whatever you want to do, so we can still continue to help push and grow the WNBA just like we do the NBA. And that's my thought.
Good point. Bria has joined us, everybody. Bria, we basically have been talking about, we did the Brittney Griner interview recap, and now we're talking about the new era of WNBA, our Caitlin Clark, our Angel Reese. You have anything you want to add to that?
Nigel, he hit all of the points that I was going to make. I was watching while I was waiting for my Ethernet cable to get here, watching and seeing Chuck's point as to how, the target audience is men, and how, the revenue and all of that. And honestly, Nigel, he hit it right on the money. It's the exposure. I mean, there are several teams that I've never seen play a single game, but I know who the point guard is. Because of the exposure and the publicity, the advertisement, they invest more in the men. And that's literally, Nigel, you hit all of the points. Great. That's all I had to pretty much say. Is just the publicity and the exposure. And now that it's getting more, you see that the cause and effect is that there's more revenue for the WNBA. Exposure, advertisement, invest more into their advertisement.
Yeah, and I agree. And one thing I will say about these girls is, and I think that the ladies of, the past, when it started in the 90s, we didn't have social media. What these young ladies do right, Chuck talked about Angel Reese, how she kind of brought in her own following. Angel Reese had been building her brand for years, even before the the NIL was a thing. She has deals with Coach. She has deals with Reebok, Sports Illustrated. She models. I mean, so what these young girls, and there's even the girls that are that are currently in the NCAA. If you go look at their TikToks, their Instagrams, they have a huge following. And that following is going to translate over, if they do get in the draft and they do make it to a WNBA team. And, that is the way of the world now, right? And so I love the talent. I love the exposure. I love the fact that these girls are bringing it and, they've got their following. They're coming with all the swag, all the same thing that the young guys did when they came in back in the day. Everything that everybody wanted to see, they're bringing it. They're bringing it to the court. Mm-hmm. And so it's an exciting time in WNBA. To be honest, I am not a huge follower of NBA somewhat, WNBA not as much as I should. And I was one of those that you talked about that were quick to say I did not like, the glass ceiling, if you will, the women getting so much less. CW, you brought some really good points in the fact of, when you think about what the WNBA brought in versus the NBA, it makes sense. Salary caps, it makes sense how much money you have. It doesn't go as far with the 11 to 12 players in the draft. It makes sense, and I think those are things that those of us that do complain don't really think about, which I think is what I was trying to get the discussion going on this particular show. I wanted us to talk about that because with the buzz of the Caitlin Clark, the Angel Reese, still some of the NCAA girls, those are things that we should think about so that if you want to see change, you have to be a part of the change you want to see. Mm-hmm. We need to start tuning in. We need to start supporting the WNBA. And so for me, it certainly has changed my perspective. So I want to say, kudos to you guys for bringing that, mm-hmm. to us and to those that tune in to our show. So I'm going to go around and we're going to do final thoughts. And then I want you guys to take some time to talk about your channel and what you guys do over there at Goatcast Podcast. I'm going to throw it back over there to CW.
Okay. Well, closing thoughts. I think everyone brought good thoughts about this. Just to quickly say, just like Ryan said in the comments, and I don't want to start no war, but what you got to understand is these WNBA is a business, and they have to get advertisers and advertising money to, so when you say they're not getting enough exposure, it's because, unfortunately, if they're not bringing enough money and they're on television, they got to get ad money. And if they're not if companies don't want to pay to advertise their product during their games, then it's just tougher for them to get that exposure. So just want to throw that in there real quick. But Big Nige, you want to talk about the channel, or
I'll let you get to it. You got it.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you guys want to check out, we are the Goatcast Podcast. We talk about pretty much all things NBA, basketball, hot topics, hot takes. That's what we do. We got to get on this playoffs going into round 2. So hopefully you guys come check us out there. It's just both of our perspectives on what's going on currently in the NBA.
Thank you, CW. Big Nige, any closing thoughts?
Only thing I'll add to the WNBA discussion, if we could get more more of their athletes to get sponsored by more of the women's products, mm-hmm. hair ties, lotion. I mean, anything that, we're not seeing these star athletes doing. And we all know that they use all these products. Yeah. Why isn't none of them sponsored by any of them? Right. That can bring more to their personal revenue, even if it's not to the entire league, just to get players paid more. And then obviously you see a couple players like a Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and they have these products and they use these same products or whatever. Now you bring in potential sponsorship to the league because you see all your major key players using it. So that'd be another thing that I would ask that happen so it can increase the revenue and the exposure of the league. In terms of the channel, obviously, we are the Goatcast Podcast, and we give you all those topics, past, present, future. We touch on WNBA topics as well, especially with all the buzz around Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. So definitely check us out and tune in for our second round preview of the NBA playoffs.
All right, Bria, any last thoughts?
Well, to piggyback off of what Nigel said again, yes, I feel like it's a cause and effect. The more advertising, the more people will fill up those seats if they know when the games are, if they know, because if we don't know when the season even starts, how we, how are we gonna fill up the seats if we don't know? So, but yeah, like hair ties, even, tampons, anything that deals with, women and women in sports, I feel like it shouldn't be an obligation. However, I feel like, they could lend more support is
Agreed.
what I'm saying, because the target audience could be reached twofold. So
Agreed.
Those are my thoughts. But yes, go subscribe to the Goatcast. As you see, Nigel and Chuck are both very, thorough. They have great talking points, and they have healthy debate. They're both great debaters. So yes, those are my final thoughts. And
thank you, Bria. All right. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. Like I said,
real quick, we just want to thank you for having us on also.
Absolutely. We're honored that you joined us today. We'd like to do more of these discussions. So stay tuned, guys, because there will be more, especially as things unfold with the WNBA, the Caitlin Clark of it all, and the Angel Reese of it all. So thank you again, Goatcast Podcast. Thank you, all of you, for tuning in. Thank you again, our actualizers. We're still at our 3,000 subscriber mark. We are pushing forward for our next big goal of 5,000. So remember, hit that subscribe button, share with the masses, and please go ahead and hit that notification bell so next time we're on here live, you can be up here with us. Join our discussions and debates. Thank you all so much again. As always, we appreciate you. And again, thanks to Goatcast Podcast. You guys have a great evening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.